Hello, so welcome to part 3 of my Ouija board chat. We'll call it a chat more than a diatribe. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to talk to you all about what you can do before you decide to play the Ouija board. So I know that a lot of people have this idea that they want to play and have some fun and get scared. And a lot of people like to do the Ouija board during Halloween or during winter months. I've had more people, friends of mine, who actually said they like to play the Ouija board when, the days were shorter and it stayed darker for longer. And maybe there's something to that, but I think that when playing the Ouija board, just understand that no matter what you do, you're going to be attracting something to you. So, and for whatever reason, I don't care why you want to do it. And if you don't believe in any of the stuff that I'm talking about, it's not going to matter anyways. But let's just do something about keeping the atmosphere more cleansed and protected. So I think number one, the one thing that it's important to do is to do a cleansing of the room. And you can do that with sage. You can do it with an incense candle or an incense, or do a candle, light a candle, and then just walk around and do a prayer, just stating that you want protection and you want everybody, calling your angels, calling your spirit guides, calling everybody that you want to call in to keep you all safe. And I like it when I actually do a cleansing in a room, to go around the windows and the doorways and to make it very clear that nothing negative is allowed in the room with me or anybody. So your words are important here because they have a lot of power. And so that power has everything to do with intention. So it has a lot to do with what you're calling to you and what you're pushing away from you. So we want to push away all that negativity, and we want to pull towards us all that positive energy and all those positive beings that will be with us while we're doing something kind of, a little scary and spooky. I think the second thing to do is to understand if you have another person or how many people are going to be in the room with you while you're doing playing your Ouija board, is to understand where they're coming from. Just if there's somebody who's afraid, understand that that person who's the most afraid is the most vulnerable. And I think that if they're the most vulnerable, it wouldn't hurt to do a cleansing around them and just to let them know that, you've done what you need to do to protect the room. So remember that it's important to explain that you're going to open up the game, open up the conversation with another realm. And how you're going to do that is by stating rules. And I think that by stating rules ahead of time, that will let something that's waiting for this opening to know that you know what you're doing. Because I think that knowledge is power. And knowledge is power specifically in this particular instance, because these type of shadow people, entities, beings, they wait for the ignorant. They wait for someone who doesn't understand what they're doing. They wait for just that, and ignorance is not bliss in this instance, believe me, it's not, but they wait for someone who doesn't know what they're doing, who doesn't have a respectable knowledge of this particular genre. They're waiting for those kind of people. And so if you come into this particular game stating rules for these things, then they're going to know, this particular person, they know I'm here. So what I think is really important is to state no negative beings can come through. Nobody negative, no negative energy is allowed. Secondly, I think it's really important to state that you're not a feast. Nothing can feed off of you, that your energy source is protected, that it's solely yours, that you're in calling your protection to say, we are protected. So you cannot, nothing can come through that can feed upon us. And I think thirdly, just state who it is that you want to talk to. Say, look, I just want to talk to the dearly departed. I know there's 5 people who's died in this house. It's an old Victorian home. I know 5 people who've died in this house. Is there A, B, C, D, E? Are you here? And you can call them by name. Now, that doesn't mean something else isn't going to come through and say, oh yeah, I'm John. Yeah, I was here, 100 years ago. What it means is that you're specifically asking for that specific person or spirit. And this thing isn't going to be able to do the damage that it normally would because you stated the rules. So I think rules are really important because in this dominion, we have rule. In this reality, we are the ones that are born with the marker of this reality, this planet. And so just remember that when you're born on this to this dimension, in this world, is that we have certain rights because we were born here. And that means that they have to respect that we have dominion in this reality. And if you know this, yeah, you have a little bit of authority there. And I think that if you go and do the Ouija board, not knowing any of this, you're going to be asking for a lot of trouble. So I think also is try to figure out what is the purpose of why you're doing it. Do you want to just get scared? Do you want an answer? Do you have questions? I think it's important to write the questions down ahead of time to say, okay, what is it that we're doing this for today? And then just have everybody have a question that they want answered. And so that way you just kind of have a little structure to what it is that you're doing. It's not just willy-nilly, just playing around. And because it's not fun if something scary comes through. And I think that if you go through this with a little bit of knowledge and responsibility and respectability, because you have to respect what you have to respect what the whole purpose is about. You have to be responsible for your part in playing the game. But you also have to understand that the paranormal has a whole set of rules that doesn't necessarily apply to us. But in this reality, I think it has to abide by what we state, because there is the portal, there is that fine line. And when we cross over into the other side, and we ask something from the other side without stating kind of our boundaries, then there are no boundaries whatsoever. And the paranormal knows, oh, this person is ignorant, this person doesn't have any boundaries. So therefore, I'm going to come, whatever's around is going to come and try to do their worst, their darndest to make our lives miserable. And I have come across people who have been so miserable and just so regretted the fact that they played the Ouija board. And I don't think that you have to regret it. I just think that if you go about the playing the Ouija board in a responsible and respectable manner, you'll be fine. Now, let's not forget the most important part of this is ending the session. Okay, you want to end it in a manner that states that you're still, you're an authority here. You have your rules and you stated them. And so it's important to tell whoever came that they have to go back now. That's very, very important. And I'm a little different here. I think that people who are afraid, if somebody's afraid, and this has actually happened, somebody was afraid, so they left the room, and there were fewer people there to close off the Ouija board. But I think that in knowing that there's probably somebody who's really afraid who might get up and just leave and just say, like, I'm not going to deal with this, I'm going to go. You still have to close out the Ouija board. And I don't think you have to have the original players to do that. You just have to have somebody in authority, someone who knows what they're doing, to close it off. And I think if everybody's intention is to end the session, that's enough. But that's just my feeling, because I've actually had to deal with all kinds of experiences with Ouija boards, where what it took was a few of the original group coming in and closing it off, and it was closed off. So I just think it's the intention of will, the intention of your authority, the intention of what it is that you want to have happen, that you have to say it in a matter of fact and an unbudging, I'm going to kick butt kind of way. So we can always do that in respect, but I'm just saying after the fact, if something doesn't leave or the session wasn't closed off appropriately and you got to come back, you've got to just say, hey, I'm saying without a shadow of a doubt, you got to go. And, you know, then they know they're playing with somebody who is knowledgeable, a bit more knowledgeable about what's happened. But closing it off is really important. You cannot forget to do that. It's like you would not leave the door, your front door open and leave for the day. You just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't park my car in a parking lot, going to the grocery store and leave the door open and the car running. It just, why would I do that? If I was dumb, or ignorant or whatever, I wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't. Nobody would do that. So what I'm saying is, it's the same thing with the Ouija board. You just don't leave the portal open. You don't leave that open to something that can be so scary and horrible. You have to learn how to close it off. And I think if more people played and they understood how important it is to close off, because even in ceremony, and I learned this many years ago, when I did ceremony, the most important thing was how I closed off my prayer, how I ended it. And I always have felt that how you end anything that you do in a blessing or prayer or ceremony, whatever, it says a lot about who you are, because you really need to understand that when there's no mean trick here in dealing with the paranormal. It's massive, it's intense, and it's beyond sometimes comprehension, because there's just so much involved in the paranormal. Playing with the Ouija board is just a small part of playing around with the paranormal, but you can actually bring in something that is really intense and mean and nasty. And I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that you have to be respectful towards the paranormal. When you ask a spirit or something questions, you have to understand that you don't know what that is. And if you still want to do the Ouija board, do it. But just understand that there's like certain guidelines and things that go into play in dealing with the paranormal. That's what I'm saying. So if you do this, then someone like me won't have to come in and try to figure out how to get rid of whatever this thing is, and then try to how to figure out how to keep it from going and dealing with somebody else, because I don't want it bothering somebody else. So if I have to come in and take care of it, I reopen a portal and I'll ask who I have to ask. I'll ask my spirit guides, my mentors. I'll ask everybody I need to, the archangels, whoever, and with the best authority that I possibly can have, with their help, I push it through that portal. And that's what I do, because I don't want anything that is possibly has come through a Ouija board to go and bother somebody else. It's not just going into a house and saying a blessing. That's important. That helps the people who are living in that house. But we also have to be conscionable about where these beings go after they leave that home. We want to get rid of them for good. We don't want to just send them off to another house, three, down the street, 3 houses down. What we want to do is we want to make sure that these things are gone for good. And I think if we can have that mindset that these things can't just hide in plain sight. And if we do the Ouija board, we play the Ouija board, somebody does, I won't, but if somebody else does want to, still do it. Go in this with knowledge, because as I stated before, knowledge is power. And you just don't want to mess with the paranormal and be disrespectful and allow something in that can bother and hurt other people. There is a responsibility to that. And anybody who does the Ouija board, who leaves the game and doesn't close off, is responsible for what happens after the fact, if it affects other people. And that's just the way that I feel. So let's just make sure that if the Ouija board is played, that we understand the rules of this reality, of the game, of the entities, what we're dealing with, and we respect the paranormal. Because I think that's so important. So I hope you kind of enjoyed this. It's just my take on it. And the reason why I decided to do this is because I realized that there's a lot of confusion when it comes to the Ouija board, because a lot of people don't think that it's anything harmful. And I've experienced situations where it did affect a lot of people. But I also wanted to bring to the forefront that these beings are out there. The shadow people, whatever is brought forth is still out there with other people to deal with. So we have to be responsible for what we bring here into this dimension and into this reality. Because I know maybe some people won't believe that that happens, but it does. And usually, like I said, and I don't like it when people say, I didn't believe it until it happened to me. When it happens to you, it's scary as hell. And it's not fun. And even when I go out and help people deal with this stuff, it doesn't mean that I, at a certain point, I'm like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But I ultimately know that I have dominion in this reality, because that's what I believe God, the grandfathers, the universe gave us as humans in this reality. We were born here. We have dominion in this reality. So with that being said, that's why I decided to do this. If you have any questions or stories that you want to share, please feel free. I mean, I would love to hear them. And if you have any questions or you're dealing with something that is a problem, feel free to write Michael and me at dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. Don't forget that we have another website, truthseekerforum.com. You can go check out articles there. And then I write for Paranormal Underground. And so you can go check them out. They have a lot of wonderful articles, and they talk about everything under the paranormal genre. That's Chad and Cheryl Knight Wilson. So Cheryl Knight Wilson and Chad Wilson. So they're phenomenal people. So check out that magazine. And so I hope you all are doing well. Thank you for watching. And until the next video, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.